In the stillness of Washington state, along the peaceful banks of the Green River, a nightmare was buried for over 2 decades. It wasn't the sound of flowing water or the rustle of leaves that haunted this place, it was the whispers of souls who would never rest. More than 49 victims, maybe as many as 70, no one knows the true number. All of them fell prey to a shadow disguised as a man. His name was Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer. Tonight, we step into his world, a place where life ends in darkness, and the truth is more terrifying than your worst nightmare. It was 1982, in the outskirts of Seattle and Tacoma. Dark roads, foggy streets, the kind of places where young women, prostitutes, runaways, lost souls started to vanish. No warning, no trace. Then one day, they found the first body by the Green River. A young girl, strangled, her lifeless eyes staring at the sky. Then a second, a third, the list grew longer. The police called it the killing grounds. Bodies scattered in the woods, under bushes, or dumped in trash heaps like garbage. But the worst part? The killer didn't stop. He reveled in it. He'd return to the scenes, gazing at his work, sometimes even interacting with the corpses. Can you imagine that? Who could do such things? Who could snuff out dozens of lives and vanish into the night like a ghost? The answer was more terrifying than anyone could imagine, because he wasn't a hulking monster or a shadowy figure from a horror movie. He was Gary Ridgway. A man so ordinary, so forgettable, that you'd walk past him in a grocery store and never look twice. Picture him, short, wiry, with thinning hair and thick glasses that magnified his dull, unassuming eyes. By day, he was a truck painter, clocking in at a factory in Renton, Washington, smearing coats of paint on vehicles with a steady hand. He'd been married 3 times, lived in a modest house with a tidy lawn, even went to church on Sundays. To his neighbors, he was just Gary, quiet, polite, maybe a little awkward. But beneath that mask was something else, something rotten. He hated women, despised them with a quiet, festering rage. He called prostitutes trash, vermin, said they dirted the world. Yet he couldn't stay away. He'd drive the dark streets at night, his truck prowling like a predator, searching for his next target. He'd spot a girl, young, vulnerable, standing alone under a street lamp, and he'd pull over. His voice was soft, almost shy, as he offered them money, a ride, a moment of kindness. They'd climb in, trusting that faint smile, and that was their last mistake. Once they were alone, the mask fell. His hands, those same hands that painted trucks with care, would wrap around their throats. He'd squeeze, watching the life drain from their eyes, sometimes whispering to them as they struggled. If they fought too hard, he kept a rock or a hammer in the truck, tools of his trade, now tools of death. 1 blow, 2, until their skulls cracked and the fight was over. Then he'd dump them by the river, in the woods, at a trash heap, tossing them aside like the garbage he believed they were. But here's the part that'll chill you to the bone. He didn't always leave them behind. Sometimes, days or weeks later, he'd come back. He'd sit with the bodies, talk to them, even touch them. To him, they weren't people, they were trophies. And when he drove away, he'd slip back into his normal life, kissing his wife goodnight, mowing the lawn, while the screams of his victims echoed only in his mind. The bodies kept piling up. By 1984, the Green River had become a graveyard. The police couldn't ignore it anymore. They formed the Green River Task Force, a team of detectives, forensic experts, even psychics, desperate to stop the nightmare. They combed the woods, dragged the river, knocked on doors. But the killer? He was always one step ahead, a phantom laughing in the dark. And here's the twist that'll make your skin crawl. Gary Ridgway wasn't just some stranger on their radar, he walked right into their hands. In 1983, a witness saw a truck like his near where a girl disappeared. The police hauled him in, sat him down in a sterile interrogation room. The lights buzzed overhead as they strapped him to a polygraph, wires on his chest, his fingers, his cold, steady pulse. They asked him, "Did you kill those girls?" He looked them in the eye, his voice flat as a dead man's heartbeat, and said, "No." The machine beeped. The needles stayed steady. He passed. They had no evidence, no fingerprints, no DNA, nothing solid. So they let him go. He walked out of that station, climbed into his truck, and drove off into the night. And you know what he did next? He killed again. And again. While the task force argued over theories and chased dead-end leads, Ridgway was out there, his hands stained with fresh blood, mocking them with every breath he took. He got cocky, too. In 1984, some say he sent a letter to the police, a taunting little note, scribbled in jagged handwriting, hinting at his crimes but giving nothing away. "Catch me if you can," it might as well have said. The detectives pored over it, but it was another dead end. He was a ghost, slipping through their fingers, hiding behind that dull, harmless face. Years passed, 5, 10, 15, and the case grew colder. The task force shrank, the headlines faded, but the bodies didn't stop. Ridgway thrived in the chaos, a predator who knew the game better than the hunters. He'd sit at home, eating dinner with his wife, while the police drove themselves mad trying to find him. To them, he was a shadow. To him, they were fools. But everything changed in 2001. DNA technology, something Ridgway never saw coming, became his downfall. The police retested old evidence, a strand of hair, a fingernail scraping, and it all pointed to one man, Gary Ridgway. On November 30, 2001, they stormed the factory where he worked. He was cuffed, but he didn't panic. He just smiled, as if he'd been expecting it. Then, to escape the death penalty, he confessed. He led the police to hidden graves, recounting each murder with a chilling calm. "I don't remember them all," he said. "Maybe 70, maybe more." In 2003, Ridgway was sentenced to life in prison. At the trial, as victims' families wept and confronted him, he said, "I'm sorry for killing them," but not a single tear fell. He's still alive today, locked away in a Washington prison, a shadow that never truly fades. But the question lingers, did he tell the whole truth? Or are there still souls out there by the Green River, waiting in the dark, never to be found? If you enjoyed this story, drop a like and subscribe for more real-life horrors. And tell me, what do you think? How many secrets are still buried by the Green River?